I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this, pick a number, get online, and kiss my hand.
Manette man is dead, shot by 2 Baldwin County deputies after they say he fired at them early today in the Perdido area. Those 2 deputies are now on administrative leave.
WKRG News 5's Debbie Williams is live tonight at the sheriff's office in Bay Minette. And Debbie, this whole thing started with a conversation and ended.
Give us the guided tour, Debbie.
Yeah, and it all took less than 4 minutes, Pete. That's according to Sheriff Hoss Mack. All of it captured on body cams and dash cams. All of it now part of an investigation that is underway. Red and blue lights lit up the early morning sky in Perdido along County Road 47. Among the flashing lights, evidence markers dotting the main road where deputies had spotted a man walking just after 1:30 in the morning.
Wearing dark clothing, wearing a hoodie. And so they thought that was a little bit unusual. He was in the area of one abandoned store and some residences. The man identified himself as Ronald Wayne Flowers. One deputy returned to his patrol unit to enter that information into their system. The other stayed with Flowers, according to Sheriff Hoss Mack. Shortly after that, the individual turned away from the deputy, turned back around, and at that time he produced a handgun. We believe he fired at least one shot towards the deputy. And at that time, both deputies returned fire.
Flowers died on the scene. In less than 4 minutes, what had started with a conversation ended in deadly gunfire.
There was no indications that this was going to go from nothing more than just an inquiry as to why you're walking down the road at 1:39 in the morning versus just a few minutes later, it results in a shooting.
Both deputies were not injured. Their names have not been released. They are now on administrative leave.
A representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast, number 117, Black Eyes of Alabama. So Raines, our little cover story here today. Well, I guess I should introduce you, Mr. Raines Russian, our contributor from Houston, Texas. How are you, Mr. Russian?
Well, I'm sitting in my garage, freezing my toes off, but it's better than sweating off other parts of my body, so I'll take it for this weekend.
So this guy is the mayor of Tallassee, Alabama, which is a town of about, 7,000? And he's also running for the Public Service Commission. He was down in Orange Beach on the campaign trail, and, turns out that he got arrested for domestic violence in the first degree. It's kind of like attempted murder, domestic violence, strangulation. So, anyhow, besides the mayor, we also have, remember Jay Barker, the All-American kid? He won the national championship under Gene Stallings. Remember the cigar picture of him and Stallings?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, he's married to country music superstar Sarah Evans, or was, and he tried to run her over in his car.
Well, anybody that's watched Alabama football can always tell you that Jay Barker was really more of a pass guy and not so great with the rushing offense. So apparently she lives based on that alone.
Poor fella. So the Tallassee mayor, this wasn't his first brush with law enforcement. It turns out that he was convicted of a misdemeanor related to a road rage incident a few years ago. So, and there's his campaign finance disclosure report. He is, in fact, running for Public Service Commission place 1, and that is Twinkle Kavanaugh's seat right now.
Well, if this guy could have learned anything from his years in public service, it's that if you want to whoop your wife, take her out to the woods.
Don't take her to the beach. Okay, so Raines. I don't know Ashley, but this came up in my Twitter feed. In Baldwin County, Alabama, people are routinely forced to wear expensive ankle monitors while out on bail, even though they haven't been convicted of a crime. Many are accused of low-level offenses and unlikely to face prison time, even if found guilty.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to circumvent the federal prohibition on debtors' prison. You can't sit out your fines anymore. So if you get caught and you owe money, you can't sit in jail and earn $100 a day towards knocking your fines down. That's debtor's prison, and they made that illegal under the U.S. Constitution. So thankfully, Hoss Mack and his group of merry men have really conjoined and worked together with the DA, Bob Wilter's office, and figured out a way. How can we really, 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 really try to get blood from a stone? Well, let's make people of nonviolent offenses plop down, I don't know, $1,300 for an ankle monitor that they got to wear for 3 months and keep continuing their court case, because that $300 a month comes in pretty handy in lieu of, since we're shooting all the criminals that we usually would ticket.
So Title 45 of the Code of Alabama, Local Law 45-284.02, creates the Community Correction Center, and it also establishes who are the members of the Community Correction Board. So that would be our presiding judge or his delegated representative, the county commission chair or their delegated representative, the sheriff or his, the DA or his, and the circuit clerk or hers. And this is the page for the Sheriff's Pretrial and Community Corrections Program. So while that's an issue here, John Archibald is on a heater right now. He's talking about the dark roots of policing for profit and what to do about it. And that gets us into Brookside, Alabama. Have you read anything more inflammatory than this article in quite some time? So the town. So you see this picture, and you see all these people in line. That's everybody lined up to go to municipal court. So check out the revenues over time from 2016 to 2020. The increase in revenues in this little town. See the red right there?
What's that red bar that's jumped up so much?
Fines and forfeitures in the municipal court. And you can see their revenue stream overall. Half of the town's money is coming from fines and forfeitures in the municipal court. Now, interestingly enough, in this little town of 1,400 people, they got a Bradley fighting vehicle, or what do they call that thing? It's not a Bradley, it's a what?
That's just an armored. That's just an armored truck.
APC. Well, it's got a gun turret on the top. You could put a 50 cal up there, no problem.
Sure, that's what originally was there, I'm sure.
So anyway, just a few more showed that total arrest, custodial misdemeanor, and felony rose 1,109% from 2018 to 2020. Brookside police made 4.4 arrests in 2020 for every household. It showed that police in 2020 patrolled 114,000 miles in the 6.3 mile town and issued 3,000 citations, a 692% increase.
I think my favorite, if you're really looking for the handbook on how to pad your stats, look no further than this little town, Brookside. If one of the things you'll read about, if you go and read that fantastic article that Archibald wrote, is that they modified their city statutes to count drug paraphernalia and drug possession as two separate charges. So if they catch you with a left-handed lucky, as Louis Grizzard used to call it, you got a nice tight one rolled up in your ashtray, and they catch you for it, they're going to charge you for the misdemeanor possession, but they're also going to charge you for the paraphernalia.
For the paper that it's rolled in. Right.
Right. So if you want to go from 1,500 drug arrests to 3,000 drug arrests, that's definitely one way to do it. Also, I'm thinking if they really want to revisit their policy, they could go from charging by the milligram where instead of getting charged with one count of misdemeanor possession of 2 milligrams of marijuana, you get charged with 2 misdemeanor possession accounts for possessing 2 1 milligram stokes of marijuana. And I'm here to tell you, if you're getting charged with anything less than, 12 milligrams, up your game, player.
So, in December, when he inquired about how many people worked at the police department, he was told that they weren't going to tell him that, citing security concerns. So, as best he could discern, there were 9 officers in that town of 1,253 people. Okay. Yeah. The average across the country is 1 officer for every 588 residents. So you can do the math on that. So anyway, they also posted on Facebook they were hiring an additional 6 officers in an effort to expand our dedication and commitment to providing superior community service and protection.
They're also looking for police officers with really good forearms and wrists, not to take down suspects of violent crimes, but to handle all the paperwork with the ballpoint pen you'll be issued.
So, Raines, we have upcoming elections. Primary is May 24th, 2022. The primary runoff is June 21st, the general election November 8th. And if you want to qualify for an office, you have to do so by January 28th at 5 o'clock.
We'll take this opportunity to remind you that if you are a registered voter in the state of Alabama, please take the time to double-check your registration before Election Day. Take the time, go online to your county registrar.
The Board of Registrars.
The Board of Registrars, and check and make sure that your voting stuff is up to date. If you've changed addresses, if you've moved, if you've done anything at all that could possibly affect your voting registration, please make sure to double check that, because it's much easier to do a few days before the election than it is to do on Election Day.
So Judge Wilters is running again. Hoss Mack is running for his 5th term. Baldwin County Commission is going to spend $65 million to build a new jail tower in Bay Minette. And these are your Senate districts and House districts, County Commission districts. There were supposed to be a series of public hearings scheduled for county land use, and all those have been canceled due to the outbreak of the Omicron variant of the coronavirus. So as soon as we hear,
just another step towards
that,
transparency in Alabama, don't cancel work, don't cancel worship, don't cancel school, but by God, cancel every public hearing you can possibly get your hands on and use COVID as the excuse.
Of course. How else would we do it? So up in Gadsden, Anniston area, closed floor, 6 staff, Alabama hospitals hit by resignations, is now stretched by the Omicron variant. You see nurses taking care of people. So and another milestone, Alabama tops 45% COVID positivity rate, among highest in the nation. 69.4 million infected in the U.S. with SARS-CoV-2, with 863,334 deaths.
I think that's last week's card.
No, that's this week's. I just looked it up.
Familiar.
No,
okay.
It went up 3 million new infections. So county hotspots last week, county hotspots this week. Now check this out, Raines. I kept going. I couldn't get the math in my head right. So you see what they did? They changed the damn shading. Look at Baldwin County.
Yeah.
Right. It's 840,
Absolutely
right?
brilliant.
So then go look at it. We're this color, and it's more than 800. It's 930, right? Or 1,100, somewhere in there.
You remember when you asked me that one time to explain to you what moving the goalposts meant?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing, because they ran out of color. The whole damn thing would be blood red.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. So 3 weeks ago, last week, this week, you see our numbers are still going up. 2,249 new cases with, it says 0. Oh, here we go. 2,400 so 2,500 cases last week with 2 new deaths. Woo! Whew, speaking for whom the bell tolls, Mo Brooks officially qualifies for U.S. Senate candidacy with Alabama GOP.
Well, that's good. That's the only thing that qualifies him to be a senator in the state of Alabama currently.
Talk about a career politician. So Mo Brooks
Let's talk about
injects his secret weapon, Roy Moore. I mean, who in the hell would bring up their friendship with Roy Moore?
Anybody that wants to run just based on running and knows that they're only in office to do one thing, and that's to run again. Speaking of career politicians, just a real quick quiz, Harry. How many pieces of legislation has Mo Brooks authored and introduced into the U.S. Senate?
I dare say, I would think there's probably some committees he's on where he's, an additional, but something that he authored himself. I'm not aware of anything. Now, there may be some.
He's authored 2 bills in the Senate. Neither one of them made it past committee. Neither one of them made it past consideration. And other than that, all he's done is vote on the big partisan bills, and that's it. Look up his voting record. If you have any give a damn at all about how your state is represented in Washington, D.C., look no further than Mo Brooks. He isn't representing anybody but himself.
Go check out the Daily Beast. They had a pretty scathing article about him. Anybody who missed it, the Lego rocket scientist from the Rip Report last week, pretty darn good one, and we'll get into some things here in a minute about what's going on with that. So this week's Lanyap, did you check it out, Rains?
I did.
The cover story is the next quadrennium. The 2022 legislative session will likely be influenced by statewide elections, and it's shaping up in a shakeup in House leadership. And that's by Gabe Tynes. That's the cover story. So the great negotiator, Jack Burrell, was absent from the meeting on Tuesday night where Continental Aerospace and their attorneys faced down with the attorneys for the Fairhope Airport Authority, and they punted. They decided to continue the status quo until I think it was March 31st of this year. So they kicked the can down the road. The great negotiator was not there, so I should have known nothing was going to get done. But Mr. Rip and I got to go to another spirited public meeting where nothing happened. Another thing to keep your eye on that's going on right now, the permitless carry bill that's being put forward by State Representative Shane Stringer. You'll remember Mr. Stringer lost his job at the Sheriff's Department for proposing this. And, of course, all of the sheriffs are against this because this is a revenue producer for them. Essentially, there's a database that exists right now that has a list of everybody that's not supposed to have a gun. So if you have a gun and you're stopped by the police, they can run you in the database and immediately take you into custodial arrest for having that firearm. So why would you need a permit? Well, it's all about control and it's all about money, and Shane Stringer gets it. I don't know if he gets it for the reason I get it, but he seems to get it. I'm sure you have a counterpoint to this. Go ahead.
No, I have no real counterpoint to it at all, because what you talked about just now is basically the internal politics of this particular issue. It doesn't have anything to do with the Second Amendment. It doesn't have anything to do with the right to bear arms, freedom to bear arms, government interference in bearing arms, any of that stuff. It's a great talking point for people who are pro-Second Amendment. However, if you really look at the base cause and the root effects of what this will actually do, is that it's just going to take revenue stream away from county sheriffs. That's it. That's the crux of the issue. And you're absolutely correct in saying that's why every sheriff in the state wants to fight it. It doesn't have anything to do with gun violence. It doesn't have anything to do with training or carry or background checks or any of that stuff. It has to do with them losing $30 a year for granting someone a pistol permit. And if you got 300 people in your counties, that's a lot of money.
Faux show. So,
hell, with $9,000 a year, you could feed 26,000 prisoners, according to the former sheriff of.
Special session of the Alabama legislature designed to allocate federal COVID-19 relief funds. And already the budget committees have come up with proposals and approved them, meaning they now go to the full chambers for debate. WSFA 12 News political reporter Aaron Davis breaks down how those committees think this one-time money should be spent.
With the proposed budgets for the funds, legislators are proud of the work that went into choosing where this money will go.
From the governor on down, including I don't know of anyone that was left out of the discussions.
We're moving through it with the kind of attitude based on those priorities that you would expect. I'm proud of the process.
And that process has brought the legislature here, allocating over $270 million for broadband, $151 million for health care, over $225 million for water and sewer projects, $20 million will go to volunteer fire and emergency management services, and $11 million for county jail reimbursements.
When you're spending $772 million, usually there's some excitement.
As legislators work across the aisle, they say this round of money has laid the foundation for how they plan to handle round two.
We're getting another $1 billion in June, I guess, May or June. And the point I made to somebody was that $1 billion is not the same that we got last year that we just completed spending. It's going to be worth less than that.
That's a big
now, when
thing
chambers
to say.
Reconvene next week, we may not hear as much debate as with a typical bill, but there could be some questions about just how this money will be used.
So let me tell you, boys and girls, there was no debate.
I'd like to know that the $1,000 I got last year is going to be different from the $1,000 I get this year. I'd certainly like somebody to tell me why.
The Lagniappe has started a new series called Green State. Everyone should read it. There is all this confusion out there about who can get a license to grow medical marijuana, who can get a license to process it, and who can get a license to distribute it. I thought it was going to be pretty clear. The people setting the regulations still don't know, if you can imagine that. So keep up with this if you're interested in it. Just like some states, Rains, if you're a if you grow, process, and distribute, okay, to be qualified in California to apply for one of those licenses, you have to show the Cannabis Commission in California that you have $1.5 million in capital in the bank before you open your doors.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an illegal process at the federal level, correct?
Correct.
You can't put your money in a bank. So, anyway, this is the most fungible asset the state has ever created. Most valuable asset is going to be the people that get these permits. And it's going to mean generational wealth for their families. So,
sure is.
You should pay attention to this, boys and girls. It is very important. And hide and watch. You're going to know everybody. If you're from that part of the state, you're not going to be surprised. If you're from Jackson, Alabama, it's going to be the same old political cronies that get everything else. They're going to get these permits. Hide and watch.
Yep.
Okay, so something you don't hear every day. This fella here killed his mother with a katana, which is a Japanese samurai sword.
Yep. Saw a great picture of it in the driver's seat of his car, a la Kill Bill, except there was a whole lot of empty Starbucks and McDonald's cups alongside it. But this man was definitely someone who could have benefited from a mental health court or the intervention of a mental health professional.
No doubt.
And just in case you were wondering, the thing that they identified him with in the article was that he was a member of multiple conspiracy theory site. So I'm putting you on my radar if you are a sword owner and a purveyor of conspiracy theories, and I'm going to keep an eye out for you.
You familiar with Anaya's Law?
Yes,
actually. Girl that was abducted after she left Auburn University and at a gas station in Montgomery, and it turns out she was murdered by a man who was out on bond for murder. So the High Court issued an order January 14th amending the state's bail schedule by raising the maximum recommended bond for non-capital murder from $150,000 to $1.5 million. Now, let me show you why this is important. Prosecutors say Davon Bray was free on $200,000 bond for the murder of Frederick Boss Hog James in August 2021, with the stipulation he wear an ankle monitor and be prohibited from possessing a firearm. Well, guess what he did? He shot and killed his damn girlfriend. Sure he did.
Yeah. Well, let's focus real quick on the mechanics of that particular bill.
All right.
So, as a lawyer, Harry, if the judge hits me with a $1.5 million bail, what do I have to pay to get out of jail?
10%, or it depends on the bail bondsman, but it'd be hard to find somebody to write a bail bond for something like that for less than 10%.
So across the board, I mean, let's talk about averages. I'm looking at paying 10% of that to get out of jail.
150 grand.
1.5 million is $150,000 cash.
And I can promise you, Davon Bray ain't got 150 grand.
Well, let's bring it back to the level that it was before January, $150,000. So if you've got $150,000 bail, 10% of that is only $15,000, right?
Right.
So let's hawk both the cars, get a second mortgage on the house, and we can get little Jimmy out of jail on a murder charge, right?
Correct.
Okay, so under this new law, it'll allow the judge a top-end maximum of $1.5 million. Does that mean that every single murder without capital enhancement is going to be maxed out at $1.5 million, or is that the
I'll
judge's
assure
discretion?
you the prosecutor will ask for it, and I'll have to
But
argue.
as always, it's at the judge's discretion, correct?
Right, but man, this is the South. They max them.
If you say so, but the reason I bring that up is that you can put bonds at whatever amount you want, and you can regulate them to whatever amount you want. But the elected judges of the state of Alabama still have tremendous overreaching power to let that person free on no bond, regardless of their conscience and regardless of what the DA asks for.
As they should, based on the evidence presented pre-trial.
Absolutely. Just a little reminder there.
So the Clark County Sheriff, who was removed from office last month, he already has 2 women who've come out and said that he sexually harassed them, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a hell of a lot more than that, what I've heard. Attorney General Steve Marshall announced the indictment of William Ray Norris, former sheriff of Clark County, for the unlawful use of campaign contributions, violation of the Fair Campaign Practices Act, use of his office for personal gain, violation of the Statement of Economic Interest, disclosure statements, that's almost every elected official in Alabama, and income tax evasion. Norris surrendered to authorities at the Washington County Sheriff's Office Tuesday and was released on a $50,000 bond. In May 2021, Norris resigned from his office after Attorney General's Special Prosecutions Division filed articles of impeachment in the Alabama Supreme Court. So stay tuned.
Well, I think that's just another great example of a top law enforcement person in the state of Alabama who's been accused and driven into the damn wall by sexual harassment, accusations of abuse of force, and everything else. And the Attorney General's office won't go after him until they can get him on tax evasion. So look at all the other police departments, police chiefs, sheriffs, etc., that are doing things in your hometown, that are doing things against the law, and say to yourself, man, I really wish our Attorney General could get this guy on campaign finance charge so we could get this crooked son of a bitch off the street.
As opposed to the other 5,000 felonies he committed since the day he was sworn in. Yeah, I get you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Harry. Much like the drill in my toolbox, you made my point even bigger.
So, Richard Shelby again brings home the bacon. He praises the U.S. Geological Survey for relocating their hydrologic instrument facility to the University of Alabama. And
I think that's fantastic news, Harry. Please use the next 4 slides and 12 minutes to explain to us what the U.S. Geological Survey does.
Well, I'm just if you're a guy that lives in Alabama and you ever go outside or get on the river, you use these websites all the time. This is Berry Steam Plant. This is at the same latitude as my hunting camp. And then when I want to go down Anyway, they've got if you want to look and see what the river stages are anywhere in the state, you can look at this website. And then, when you're going down Perdita River, you sure as hell wouldn't want to go 2 days ago because there wouldn't have been any banks. But maybe you see here how they give us all this information. And I think it's great they're here.
I think it's fantastic that they relocated it to the University of Alabama. But speaking for my outdoorsman family down on the island, they think the U.S. Geological Survey is a list of what the state capitals are, and they don't consult no computer before they get out in the water.
So we talked a little bit about this before. Mobile and Baldwin County legislative priorities for 2022, funding courts, Go Mesa money, and aggravated menacing. So I don't want to get into that too much. But anyway, the Gulf of Mexico Security Act is the acronym that we're talking about when we say Go Mesa. Alabama is one of 4 Gulf Coast states that get 37.5% specified within Go Mesa when it was signed into law in 2006, and the revenues coming back to the coastal region have packed a punch in recent years. 17 coastal projects were funded last year with $41 million.
Guess what the only state on the Gulf of Mexico that doesn't get money from Go Mesa is?
Florida.
Nope.
Mississippi. Why?
And that's because Mississippi does not allow oil exploration or production within its territorial waters. Now, you would think, well, shoot, you've got casino gaming. Why not drill a couple of oil wells in the Gulf of Mexico? It's because Mississippi's territorial waters only extend out about 8 miles from the shore, and they tried finding oil there, and there isn't none. So, womp womp, Mississippi.
Yeah. So Mobile, Baldwin, Monroe counties get millions in transportation funding. And right there you can see the projects that are going to be going on here in Spanish Fort, Loxley, and Daphne. Considerable amounts of money. So then just some random stuff. Not that we should worry about it, but if you're a screwdriver lover, you might want to switch off to something else. Orange juice is
also something I've noticed, and I don't know if it's just here in Texas, but I had a hard time finding pasta. Check your local shelves. I had to buy fettuccine, and God forbid I had to buy a pasta cutter to make my own tagliatelle with because I can't find tagliatelle anywhere. The stores are getting empty when it comes to pasta, and that is a catastrophe.
What are we going to do, Rains? You're going to have to make your own pasta, man. It's like making your own toilet paper or rolling your own cigarettes. So the Supreme Court this week refused a request from former President Donald Trump to block the release of White House recordings regarding January 6th. And this, between Tuberville, Brooks, and our Attorney General, you got some major players in this thing from Alabama, right? And none of them were cooperating.
It truly is going to be something to behold when all of this comes out in the wash, whose names are mentioned and whose names were discussed and whose voice is on the recordings.
No kidding. So remember a few years ago when they had a turnover at Alphabet, and I don't know, that you know how they do those big Google events, and it's kind of like a TED Talk almost, and the theme of the new CEO a few years ago was "Don't be evil." Do you remember that? That was the Google unofficial slogan. So what could be more evil than a secret deal to carve up targeted advertising?
I really don't understand how people can be so outraged about this sort of thing. It's just because it's in the national purview now, and you can talk about it online without having to go to your local coffee shop. Companies in this country, in this world, have been doing things like this since they invented companies. So if you want to go dig up Adam Smith and wring his neck, go right ahead. But I'm not going to get outraged about stuff like
Alan
this because
Keyes.
That's how companies do business in a capitalist world. I mean, you want free market, you got free market, you got to put up with the schmutz, as my members of the tribe like to call it.
So Dr. Wilson is again being praised in all the different scientific magazines. This one came out this week, and I thought I would share it with you. He really is a giant. Really was a giant, and will continue to be in the world of science, and in particular, his marriage of sociology.
Truly, and I think one of the greatest things that he ever said is they asked Dr. E.O. Wilson about what his favorite movie was, and he said The Pink Panther, and the interviewer said, "Oh, is it because you're a big fan of Peter Sellers?" He said, "No, I like the song." He said, "You mean the theme?" Because what keys you on the theme? Because it was like it was written by me. Da-da, 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 da-da. That's the only E.O. Wilson joke I got.
So I thought this was a joke. I don't know what to think about this. I know
exactly what to think about.
The Met, they can do whatever they want to. It's their museum, okay? It's a private museum. They can do whatever they want.
Harry, do you realize how much the American Museum of Natural History spends on maintenance, reconstruction, and cleanup every morning? It's because the Theodore Roosevelt statue comes to life every night and leads the other museum exhibits in completely trashing the museum. It has nothing to do with his racist history. They're just trying to keep the ruckus down from the Night at the Museum movies. Moving on.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Didn't know this could happen. Did you actually read the article, Raines? I shared it with you.
I did not.
Anyway, it sounds pretty excruciating. We'll move on. But I did think it was funny that this came up in my Twitter feed right up under the Major Crimes Unit is working an officer-involved shooting in Perdido. So, were you a big fan, Louis Anderson?
I wasn't a big fan. I liked Louis Anderson's early stuff, but he got to be kind of one note over time, but he was terribly funny. I really admired his comedy. And I hate to see that he's gone, man. We've lost 2 comedy bigs this week between he and Bob Saget. And then on top of it all, Mr. Loaf passes. One of the most prolific singers I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. That guy was a force of nature. And I hate to hear that COVID got him too.
Sure did. All right, dude. So do you know anything else?
Well, keep an eye on the Crimean Peninsula. Things are starting to get a little dicey over there, and any of you faithful listeners and watchers who are still paying attention to Tucker Carlson every night, you'll note that he mentioned that he thinks that we should be on the side of Russia should this thing cook off. And with that, Russian Interference LLC is signing off for the weekend.
So I just thought I'd show this to you just because it's almost unbelievable.
I saw that and I loved it. That was in Mobile. That's in Mobile, Alabama.
The People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. I kid you not.
Organic, free-range, grass-smoked human.
So I have a theory. The reason that cannibalism is taboo is that people must taste great. Don't you think?
Oh, well, according to, if you read any of Michener's stuff about the South Pacific, we taste like slow roasted pig.
Is that right?
And I'm here to tell you.
I figured there must be some, there must be some reason it's a taboo, but it must be delicious.
I don't know. There's a part of me that errs on the side of certain culinary science. Like, we have a pervasive problem with feral hogs in Texas. I mean, they're just everywhere. And somebody said to me once, you know why we have a problem with feral hogs? I said, why is it? There's not enough ammo? He said, no, they don't taste good. If they tasted good, we wouldn't have a feral hog problem. And I thought, huh.
That's
and
not
then I
bad.
think about eating somebody. Then I think about eating a human being like in a plane crash or something and how it's always last resort. And I'm thinking, it can't be that good. I mean,
that's why I always fly with a salt shaker in case we crash in the Andes.
They'll eat the wasabi sides from the sushi trays before they'll eat human. That tells me maybe they don't taste that good.
All right, so I got one more story that I'm sure you're going to love. You ready?
Keeping planning officials busy. Many of the projects are under review and being debated right now. NBC 15's James Gordon joins us live. James, folks are wondering if our local infrastructure can handle the surge.
Well, Kim, it's all about wide open spaces in the zoned and unzoned areas of the county. And as it stands, Planning Commission officials say that 20% of its applications are for RV parks. Popping up everywhere. This one RV park is in the Fairhope planning jurisdiction. Why are they so popular?
I do think there's a demand for them simply because rent in Baldwin County has gotten so high. And so I think there's a lot of workers in town because of the growth that we're experiencing. So I do think they serve a purpose, but I do think that you have to be very careful of the impact they have, again, on your utilities, the density in a certain area, and also on traffic.
County planning and zoning officials say just as fast as they've been getting construction applications, they've also been getting complaints and concerns.
Baldwin County is pretty unique. Citizens have to come and petition to become zoned, and then they have to get 10% of the signatures for the registered voters in that area, and then an election is held.
Many of the latest RV park and RV neighborhood applications are for upscale projects. Planning officials say they expect to see more of these RV ventures.
We have citizens who come to us and say, "What, you're allowing an RV park to come into this location, but it's in an unzoned area." And so we are evaluating traffic, we're evaluating stormwater, we're evaluating utilities. But beyond that, we don't have the ability, the tool set, without zoning to evaluate compatibility. And that's usually everybody's concern, or one of the primary concerns is they don't want an RV park right next to their residential home.
And
again, I'll just
some control of citizens living outside the city limits of Fairhope and in the Seminole area are set to vote on whether or not to become part of the county's planning and zoning jurisdiction. That election takes place February 15th.
February 15th. There is an election.
That's the day after Valentine's Day.
That's correct, and it is for 3 different planning jurisdictions to be activated in Baldwin County. Remember the one Rip's been talking about all this time? District 8.
Right.
So there's 832 and another one I can't remember. I think it's down towards the beach. So anyway, something to keep your eyes peeled about. And we've reached the end of our time together, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you next time, and hopefully we will have Mr. Rip here.